Welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 71. Today is Friday, February 10th, and I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Thanks for joining me today. You know, I was looking outside before I turned the camera on. I'm looking outside over my shoulder in the camera right now. This time of year is just coming to the end of the light that I love so much about the late fall and winter months, where the light, when it's still pretty early in the day, is slanting. And down here in North Carolina, there are a few days like that, really, because being closer to the equator relatively to where I grew up in Western New York and in Michigan, the light is at this low angle, fewer days. It climbs more vertically pretty quickly. But anyway, it's a beautiful time of year. And this is a beautiful day down here. It's in the upper 60s, sunny. I won't say quite balmy weather, but I will say that we have already the beginnings of pollen. Yesterday I was outside and a friend who was walking by stopped me and said, "Emily, the tree right there next to your house has smoke coming out of it." And so we stepped across the street to look, and it was puffs of pollen coming off the top of a cedar tree. It is not even the middle of February, and we have pollen. Yeah. Anyway, it is a beautiful place to live despite this kind of thing. Welcome again. Flosstube means cross stitch. Variety show means something else, and we'll see what that turns out to be. I'm going to show first Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather. This is charted by Golden Kite. Golden Kite charts a lot of things, but works of art in a lot of cases, and they use a lot of blended threads. And I think this has something over 100, maybe over 150 individual colors of DMC, and then a lot of blends, i.e. 2 strands, one of each of 2 colors. But in doing that is how they get the reproduction of what the original painting looked like. This type of painting requires that type of detail in order for it to really come out. So I've been trying to be very mature here. Way down at the bottom, I had some empty squares where I had just 1 or 2 stitches of a particular color, and then it might or might not have carried on into this area down here. And so I've been filling those in. I've been finding those empty stitches and stitching it, and then if I can, filling in another few stitches down there. And it's kind of slow going in terms of making lots of stitches in one stitching session, but it has to, those stitches have to be filled in. Every stitch is a stitch toward the goal of completion. So I've done that. I've done about 600, 700 stitches since the last time you saw this. So, oh, and the other big news is I just passed the 50% mark. I started this on March 28th, 2021. So almost 2 years took me to reach 50%. Now last year I didn't get as much done on it, but that's all right. It'll come. Winter Rose Manor. This is by Brenda Gervais with a needle and thread. I had decided, I think I mentioned this, so here's the size that it's going to be, and I'll fold this behind and I'm sorry, I didn't iron it. But I'm not quite at the bottom. There is a border that goes below the snow. And I decided I was going to stitch at least 1 thread's worth of the snow every day, which I've done. And I also filled in more of those flowers along that border. And I've started the fence, which I should also do at least 1 thread of fence every day. But in the course of stitching the snow, it's just easier to count it if I put the tree in as soon as I come to the opening, the blank spot for it. So I have 2 trees. I think the next thing I'm going to do is carry on with the snow and maybe finish the rest of those flowers, but I want to start that border along the bottom. And I might go back up also and start the border up here that carries on, which is a little, there's 3 different border patterns in this design. So the one at the bottom is these cherries or berries or whatever, and then up here is just sort of a neutral, couple of neutrals. But if I get those borders in, especially if I get over here and it works out, you know, I've counted correctly, I could start the house and sort of bring the house from this side and bring the snow from this side, and that would help because that's a lot of stitching in there. And I'm doing this on the call for everything, which is Brenda's Brew. No. Yes, Brenda's Brew by R&R. And the overdyed threads, which are various weeks and so forth. And I'm doing it as the pattern says, which is 1 strand of thread. And it's variegated thread, so in most cases I'm completing my cross of each stitch rather than doing, you know, all the legs in one direction and then coming back, which is how I do in full coverage when I can, and how I do if I'm like in pieces I'll show later. But doing the variegated thread really means I need to complete each stitch, which is not as fun for me, I find. It's a little more tedious. Well, no, I shouldn't say it's not as fun. It's tedious in a different way, is what it is. And the fun part of it is that it's finished. That is, each stitch is complete, and so I can see how it's looking without having to sort of fill in mentally what the remaining stitch, part of the stitch is going to be. So it's different, it's just different. It's not really, there's nothing wrong with it. Eliza Stringer, age 6. Did I finish this? I talked about possibly finishing it the last time I showed you. Not quite, but it's getting there. I finished the word truth, so that little quote is done. And I decided what I'm going to do with the this border here. That right there. Since this is all charted as one color without any differentiation, you have to make up what you're going to do. And I have decided, you can see I've done the outline in my green color, and in those little ball-shaped areas, I'm going to fill in the 3 outer ones in pink and the central one in the brown, the tan color. So the tan will show up again as it really needs to balance out the sampler. And there's the beginning of Eliza's name, Eliza Stringer, age 6. So I really have her name to finish this border and to finish this little border. Oh, yeah, that's right. I finished these little doodads around the outside of it as well. I finished that. So it's coming. Over there, that's the digit of her name because she or her governess misjudged how much space it would take. This is 46 count Latte, and these are 100.3 silks. Finishing, I began to think about finishing, and I'm considering, there's some tutorials I've seen about hem stitching in linen. So I'm considering just doing that. Hem stitching, maybe a little bit closer. But then because it's so light and, I'll say, flimsy, I might then back it with even just muslin or something, just to sort of give it some substance. And I might back it within the hem stitch area, so let the hem stitching come, you know, at whatever distance from the edge, but then have the backing start at that hem stitching and go across the back of the linen. And that will also hide my threads on the back, which, you know, I feel like this is a fairly tidy. For one thing, this is so thin, this linen, that I didn't dare carry threads very much. So tidiness was sort of forced upon me, which it's fine. I usually try to be tidy, but especially in white thin fabric. This is sampler 193 by 2x2 Stitch Art, a Ukrainian designer. I have several other patterns. This is an Etsy shop. I really like this. I'm enjoying it. And you'll see I have it on this new gigantic hoop, which it's hard to call this a hoop because I think of hoops as round, but cross-stitch frame. Now this is by Nerge, who also makes my my stand that holds hoops. I will say it doesn't hold this as well as you might think, but the thing about this is it's great to have all of this stretched out, and if I were doing extreme cross-country type stitching on a full coverage piece, then this might be exactly the thing. But I find that it's hard to work on because it's so wide across, and I have short little arms. So, you know, if I'm doing this, I'm working like this, and I'm having to reach way over here, it's just a lot of motion. And so I think this size has its uses. I have another one here, which is the next smaller size. And then I have another one coming, which is the next smallest size. And I also am on the lookout for trying to figure out exactly the brand I want to get of the spring tension, ones that you grip the ends of this loop of springy wire snaps in to hold your linen in place. I want to get one of those recommended to me by my friend Leslie, of maybe a 5 or 6 or 7 inch diameter, and I don't know exactly which brand to get, but I've mostly been working around in here. About 700 or so stitches since you last saw it, and this passed the 25% mark, so I feel making progress. It's all good. Fanfare, please. Drum roll. This is finished. This is the holiday countdown stitch along by designed by Modern Folk Embroidery and Roxy threads and fabric. It was the one that was supposed to be completed between December 1st and December 25th. It is what, February? That time at least, I think I know what happened. So the camera shut off. I'll say unexpectedly, but now that I have sort of noticed what I was doing exactly at that moment, I might know why it happened. Now, why it happened, that is, I might have known. I might know what I did to cause it to happen, but why that would cause it to happen, I don't know. But here you are. Again, as I was saying, it's February something, and I only now, a few days ago, have finished it. So my final opinion on this is, if you were to show me just this half of it, I would say that, oh, it's upside down. That's interesting. I would say that is pretty, you know, fairly cohesive, especially that part. I think the colors go together and there's some nice spark to it. It works pretty well. And then I like this band, even the colors in it. I don't know that it goes so well with what goes above it, but it's fine. You get over to this side, I really like this, and I can imagine that in some other beautiful colors. This little sampler area, I don't like the colors, and it's more than just not liking that super light color in there. Now, I mean, I have it in my mind, oh, I should do this border in something else, in some other colors, and I might do that sort of recreation of this, but I find it hard to believe that I would make, I certainly won't make this piece again the way it is. And even though I can imagine that I could do this little sampler section in colors that are better, or I should say, that please me more, I don't know that I would really do it. But it is finished. And the exciting thing about that is now I know what I have left in terms of the floss, which that other pattern that was provided along with this, it was part of the Christmas packaging, that pattern uses this floss. It's supposed to use the floss you have left over. So I can sort of see what is called for there and decide if I'm going to use the leftover floss or use something different. So anyway, but I do want to make that, and you know, if I ever get close to making it, I'll show it again. But now, Blackbird weekend was last weekend. Yes, the first weekend in, what month are we in? I almost said June. Can you believe it? Wonder why I did that. This little thing is called Spell of the Moon, and it's from the collection Winds of Autumn by Blackbird Designs. And here's the cover of it. Yeah, here it is. I really like it. And that's what I decided on because it's small. And because the thing I really want to make out of this book is this piece right here, which is Mighty Oaks from Little Acorns Grow. And I think I mentioned some of this last time, or maybe I just partially mentioned it. I am going to do that with the called for threads because I think that the Blackbird palette in a sampler-ish design like that requires some very careful conversion to DMC if you're going to do that, or it requires the called for colors. It just, their palette is quite special, I think. Now, I don't have the fabric either, but once I have the threads, I will do what people do, what one does, which is called something like a floss toss, I think. And I'll lay out the threads on different colors of fabric that I already have and make a decision about what I might do. Now this is, as I said, it's the picture of the moon. What is it called? Spell of the Moon. And this is my start. This is last weekend. So I got all, 3/4, 7/8 of the border done. And down there at the at the very bottom, you can see the beginning of the tree, which is a lot of solid stitching, and then the moon and the owl are, ooh, I almost showed you the pattern. Well, that would really show it. So there's this tree, which I've just done the very bottom of. So the tree, the weird leaves, the moon and the owl, the house, and this little flower basket. I like it. I really do. I think it's going to be good. And I think this is great fabric for it. This is called Dune, and it's 32 count Lugana. So I chose the most modeled, or one of the more modeled corners of it. This is a candidate for the so it's really not as my computer, everything is just being weird today. It's not, well, it is kind of yellow, I guess, yellowish. I'm not sure I like deeply modeled cross-stitch fabric. I mean, I realize there's some philosophy going on there, but for instance, if you're doing a sampler reproduction, do you want it to look the way it looks now, as if you have the antique hanging on your wall, or do you want it to look the way it looked when it was first stitched? And I recognize the philosophical debate, and that's fine. I think that there's room for both. It's interesting, I was watching a Flosstube, a fairly new one called the Antique Stitchers, or Antique Needleworkers. I can't remember exactly, but it's a couple of friends, and they're pretty wild and over the top, unruly. And more to say about that sort of thing in a little while. But one of them says, when I stitch a sampler, I put my name on it. If I stitch a reproduction sampler, I put my own name on it because I stitched it. And in the days of when it was originally stitched, there would be, you know, maybe in a little schoolhouse, there might be 20 girls all stitching the same sampler, and they would not put the teacher's name on it. They would put their own names. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me. The acorn, I mean, we do this now with these reproduction or based on samplers. For instance, the Blackbird Designs usually doesn't strictly reproduce a sampler. They use elements from an antique sampler to create other items, other parts of, you know, needle rolls and drums and another sampler or two, in order to honor the creativity of the original stitcher, but make it their own as well. And in all those instances, they put their own initials in, and the year that they stitched it, not the ancient year. So that does make sense to me. I don't know how, I mean, I haven't stitched that type of sampler yet. The next one, the one that I am likely to stitch that is that sort, which I've mentioned to you before, is the Harriet Salt Bristol Orphanage sampler. I don't have the chart here. I'm just talking now, so I'm not prepared. And that one, of course, has Harriet Salt in it, and it might even have some other information about her, like her orphanage name or number or something. I don't know. I don't remember the details of it. But would I not put her name in? Would I put my name in that one? I don't know. Probably not. I would probably put her name in it. But I haven't even started that. I haven't even started really thinking about that. At least not in any kind of detail. Okay, so that is all the current things that I have to show. And because my camera shut off partway through here, I'm not 100% sure of how long I've been talking. But I do have a little bit of news update kind of thing and a little bit of a story to tell. First of all, when I signed up for the 2023 countdown box from Modern Folk Embroidery / Evertotes and so forth, I also ordered myself a set of 4 reds, which I should have this. I should have a card or something behind it so you can see how beautiful those are. And they are, some of them are more variegated than others. This is more variegated. I can't really tell what you can see, but these two are pretty much variegated. This is a little bit variegated. These are ever so slightly variegated. I love red. It's my favorite color. So, I don't know. That was a bit of an extravagant purchase because DMC makes a lot of wonderful reds at a fraction of the cost of those. But DMC's variegated threads are not good. When it comes to the time, which will be a few months from now, of making the, starting the Mighty Oaks Blackbird piece, I will need the threads, and they're all Weeks Dye Works, and so I started on my quest to find them. So these two are used in that sampler. This is Weeks Oilcloth and is the darker one, and Weeks Oak. And these are very nice. They're sort of, I would call them brown browns or dull browns rather than warm browns. They're not so much in the gold direction, I would say. And because I was going to have to pay an awful lot of shipping per cost of the thread, I also ordered these 2 blues because I have a few ideas in mind, and you can sort of see, I think they're called Denim and Blue Suede and Michael's Navy. So maybe I only got 2. I thought I might have gotten 3, but 2. And now I have some more threads coming from 123 Stitch, and I think that does it. I think that's all of them. It's interesting not having a local needlework shop where I can go and see these. That's one of the reasons that I'm just deciding I give up. I give in. I'll use the called for because I can't really make a judgment, because you can't tell by looking online what something really looks like or what color something really is. So I just have to use money instead of gas, I guess you could say, and order some things in order to see what they're like. So that's sort of what I'm doing, although I will say it is a rabbit's hole. If you think, well, I won't say you, because you, I'm sure, are not like this, but I am like this. I think to myself, oh, I now have 4 colors of 100.3 silk. You know, I should own all the colors. Emily, don't do that. Thankfully, those are enough more expensive, and they're, I would say, fewer applications that I would want to make of those, that I'm not really tempted to get a bunch of 103 silks. But the Weeks Dye Work stuff, I'm kind of tempted. But that's all right. Not doing it. Okay, variety show is going to be storytelling. But first, a little updates about what's coming up. So this coming week, I actually think on Sunday, Cindy and I are going to make another galloping horse video. It'll be the 3rd one. The first one doesn't have that title, but I might be able to change its title in YouTube without messing things up. Not sure about that. But I've made a little playlist under this video of the quilting videos so that those will all be grouped together in a playlist as they come into being. So we're going to make a quilting video, and that will be in place of the Flosstube and Variety show for next week. The following week, I will make a Flosstube and Variety show as usual. The week after that, I won't, because Cindy and I will be at the quilt show in Hampton, Virginia, which we'll talk about on our video that we make on Sunday. That will go up sometime next week. So that's what's coming up. Then after the quilt show, it'll be the beginning of March, and I expect to be back making weekly videos of the Flosstube and Variety show category. So that's what's coming up. Secondly, one of the things I'm doing this weekend, some of you are kind enough to be interested in this on my behalf. World Puzzle Federation Sudoku Grand Prix Round 2 is this weekend. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be trying to find 90 minutes when I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and awake and caffeinated sufficiently and have nice sharp pencils and can be ready to go on that. The way it works, it's a paper and pencil test. You go to the web page having logged in and download the test onto your computer, and then what I do is I then immediately open up the answer page to be sure that I'm ready to enter the solution codes for each puzzle. And then I go to the bathroom and I clear the decks and I make sure that I'm ready. I'm really ready. The light is right. I'm, comfortable. The temperature is good. All of that nonsense. I have my back scratcher handy, erasers, very important. And then I download the password, because the time starts the moment you download the password. Then I have to insert the password into the file and then print it, and then run to the printer in the other room and get it, and then come back and start to work. So from downloading the password to obtaining my printed pages takes about 2 minutes, probably. of my 90. So I have 88 minutes left. Now, it happens that in April, I'm going to be away the weekend of the Grand Prix. And I could skip it because I'm aware of the fact that I could just give that a skip. I don't need to do it every single month, but I enjoy it so much. So what I think I'm going to do today, this weekend as a trial, is I'm going to see what is involved in me doing it on my iPad, where I can use my Apple Pencil and use GoodNotes is the app I use, and just see how that works. So I'll do it this weekend when I don't also have the issue of being in a hotel room and, not having my refrigerator handy and to get myself a drink or whatever. And I'll just see how that works. Then I'll know whether that's a viable option for the weekend that I'm gone, and I'll be able to mentally prepare myself to not do it. Now, yes, I could probably manage to print from that webpage at the hotel, because there is a business center at the hotel I'll be staying at, a business center. It's an old, tired Best Western hotel in a smallish town in Washington State is where I'm going to be visiting my aunt. And I just don't know. Now, I could also probably print it at her house, but I can't do it at her house because there's no possible way that she would not interrupt me. Just because, we're together and we aren't together very often, and we'll want to talk to each other instead of me trying to block out all distractions and do Sudoku for 90 minutes. So, yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's what I'll be doing today. I think I'm going to try, or this weekend, I think I'll try it on the iPad. Now, the story. I'm sorry, I'm sure this is long. I really can't tell. I keep babbling. No more babbling, Emily. Tell the story. This coming week is Valentine's Day, which I always think about, young people in love, and it's not just young people in love, but often it's young people in love. But I think back to when my husband and I met and how that went down. And there's a particular story that is true that I love to tell about the time that we were dating. So I was in graduate school here at UNC in musicology, and he was a fifth-year undergraduate because, we are the same age, but he graduated the year after. He got his undergraduate degree the year after I did, when I was a first-year graduate student, because he changed majors. But he was a fifth-year undergraduate in the music library. I spent a lot of time in the music library, so I saw him there a lot. He worked in the music library is what I'm trying to say. Wow. But we mostly saw each other, at our church choir rehearsal. And the church building was about 3/4 of a mile from my dorm. And choir rehearsal was Wednesday evenings. And it came about that pretty early in the choir rehearsal year, he started to walk me home after choir rehearsal, because I was going to walk 3/4 of a mile through married student housing and then up on one of the main roads through campus and past, a parking lot and finally to my dorm. And it was very gallant of him, what is the word? To want to walk me home. Wasn't that nice? And so he walked me home. Pretty much rain or shine, warm or cold, he walked me home. And many, many times we would sit on the steps of the dorm once we arrived there and talk, and sometimes talk long into the night. And, we got to holding hands and doing what you do when you're in love. And years later, so that was in 1980, we got married in 1982. The 1980s when I came there. Years later, maybe 10 years later, I learned from his roommate that he drove, Byron, my husband, drove to choir rehearsal every week. He drove his car to choir rehearsal every week. When he arrived at choir rehearsal, his roommate was also in the choir. He handed his keys to the roommate. And the roommate drove his car home back to their house where they lived, which was about 2 miles from my dorm. And so then Byron, my husband, my then boyfriend, didn't have a car, so he couldn't drive me home, so he walked me home. And the reason he did that was because it took longer to walk me home than to drive me home. Now, isn't that just something? Isn't that sweet? So that is, that's sort of one of the hallmark stories of the beginnings of our relationship. And I just love that. I love the fact that I didn't learn it for years. I just think that is really funny. So anyway, Byron and I had our 40th wedding anniversary last summer. What did we do? We had people over for dinner, and our son and daughter-in-law came. And we didn't do any trips or anything. Yeah, we don't really, other than my birthday, which I expect to be celebrated for 3 months before and 3 months after the date, we don't really celebrate those sorts of dates in our lives that much. But my birthday definitely gets attention. And our 40th anniversary got some attention because, you know, there's no guarantees in life. Who knows whether we will live to see our 41st, our 45th, our 50th, and so on. And so you want to take advantage and you want to enjoy the days and the moments that you have. So I hope that you have great stitching moments this weekend, Super Bowl this weekend. You're having people over. You're doing anything special? I think we're just going to be quietly at home watching the football game and the commercials, and I'll do some cross stitch or knitting and so forth. That's Sunday evening, right? Yes, Sunday evening. So that's what we're doing. So that's all. Thanks so much for joining me. Many blessings to you, friends.